It is 4:15 a.m. on a Tuesday in Gresham, Oregon. The air inside the small two-bedroom house is biting, but 69-year-old Gary doesn't turn on the heat. He can't afford the 2026 utility rates. Instead, he sits at a small laminate kitchen table, the blue light from a calculator reflecting off his glasses. Beside him is a single envelope from his dentist. It's a bill for $4,200. Gary isn't a gambler. He isn't irresponsible. He spent 38 years managing supply chains. He paid off his mortgage in 2018. He has $200,000 in his 401k. By every standard taught to his generation, Gary should be winning. But as he stares at the numbers, his chest tightens with a cold, familiar panic. In 2026, $200,000 isn't a fortune. It's a countdown. The math of his life has been hijacked. If he pays for the dental surgery, he loses his emergency cushion. If he doesn't, the infection spreads. This is the new American reality. A silent, predatory collapse is sweeping through the suburbs, targeting the very people who did everything right. Millions of American seniors are exactly like Gary. They are one broken water heater, one car transmission, or one medical copay away from absolute destitution. The system they trusted didn't just fail, it turned into an extraction machine. To understand why Gary is terrified, we have to look at the brutal divergence of 2026. 30 years ago, in 1996, the median cost of a home was roughly $120,000. Today, in the mid-2020s, that same home in a modest suburb averages over $500,000. But it isn't just the housing, it's the invisible creep. Property taxes that were $2,000 a year are now $8,000. Homeowners insurance has tripled as climate risks and inflation recalibrate the market. For some on a fixed income, these aren't just line items. They're the walls of a trap closing in. In 1990, the average American spent about 10% of their income on healthcare. By 2026, that number for seniors has exploded. Even with Medicare, the out-of-pocket reality is a nightmare. Prescription drugs for chronic conditions, specialized care, and the sheer cost of basic dental and vision, which Medicare famously neglects, have become the primary drivers of senior bankruptcy. We were told that if we saved $1 million, we would be the millionaire next door. But the 2026 dollar has the purchasing power of a quarter from the 1990s. The goalposts didn't just move, they were taken off the field entirely. Consider Elena. She lives in Savannah, Georgia, at 74. She should be spending her afternoons in her garden. Instead, she is standing behind a cash register at a big box retailer for 30 hours a week. Elena isn't working because she wants to stay active. She is working because her Social Security check is $2,000 and her basic cost of existence, rent, food, medicine, and insurance, is $2,400. Every month, Elena starts in the red. She has spent the last 3 years selling off the heirlooms of her life. First, the jewelry, then the antique furniture. Now, she is down to the things that don't sell. She is part of the working dead, a generation that retired, realized the math was a lie, and had to beg for their old lives back in a labor market that views them as disposable. The data is emotionally devastating. In 1970, only about 7% of seniors lived in poverty. By 2026, the near-poverty demographic, those living just one paycheck above the line, has surged to nearly 40% of the senior population. The middle class didn't disappear. It aged into a state of permanent fragility. The betrayal is psychological. Gary remembers his father retiring in 1992. His father had a pension from the local mill, a modest savings account, and full health care. He spent 20 years fishing and traveling. Gary did more. He worked harder. He invested in the stock market. He followed the 4% rule. But the rule was written for a world that no longer exists. In 2026, the volatility of the market, combined with the lifestyle inflation of basic necessities, means that a 4% withdrawal rate is a fast track to zero. When the cost of eggs, fuel, and electricity rises by 20% in a single year, the stable retirement portfolio becomes a suicide pact. The nuclear reveal of our era is this: the middle class wasn't outspent. The value of their labor was engineered to collapse, while the cost of their survival was engineered to skyrocket. We are witnessing the first generation in American history that will enter their 80s with less security than their parents had in their 60s. This isn't a failure of character. It is a failure of a system that treats aging as a liability rather than a stage of life. Every 90 seconds, another senior in America realizes they can't afford their medication and their groceries in the same week. They make the senior choice. They split pills in half. They skip meals. They turn off the lights and sit in the dark to save $10 on the electric bill. This isn't happening in a third world country. It's happening in Scottsdale, in Troy, in Gresham. The invisible enemy is asset inflation. For decades, the Federal Reserve and the financial institutions pumped the value of assets, stocks, and real estate to record highs. If you own the assets, you feel wealthy. But for the senior who needs to live off the yield of those assets, the game is rigged. The yield doesn't keep up with the cost. The house you live in might be worth $600,000, but you can't eat the drywall. And if you sell it, where do you go? Rent for a one-bedroom apartment in 2026 has hit a floor of $2,000 in almost every livable zip code. The one emergency isn't a metaphor. It's a specific ticking clock. For Gary, it's the dental bill. For someone else, it's a slip on the ice that leads to a 3-week rehab stay not fully covered by insurance. For another, it's their adult child losing a job and needing to move back home, draining the last of the safe liquid cash. The emotional descent is profound. It starts with recognition, noticing the bank balance isn't rebounding. Then comes anxiety, checking the mailbox with a sense of dread. Then comes the pressure, the realization that there are no more extra things to cut. Finally, it reaches existential realization. The life you worked 40 years for is a house of cards, and the wind is picking up. There's a deep, quiet anger brewing in the senior centers and the break rooms of America. It's the anger of a generation that realized the social contract was a one-sided agreement. They paid in, but the payout was devalued before they could touch it. We see the snapshots of this collapse every day, but we choose to look away because the truth is too terrifying. We see the grandmother delivering Uber Eats in a rainstorm. We see the grandfather working the night shift as a security guard, his knees swollen, his eyes tired. We tell ourselves they are staying busy. We lie to ourselves because the alternative is admitting that the American dream has a shelf life, and for millions, that shelf life just expired. The clock is ticking louder now. By 2030, the last of the baby boomers will have hit retirement age. The strain on the system will be total. But for Gary, 2030 is a lifetime away. He only cares about next Tuesday. He has to decide if he will pay the dentist or if he will risk the infection. He looks at his hands. They are the hands of a man who built things, who moved things, who kept the economy running for 4 decades. And now, those hands are shaking as he tries to find a way to make $400 cover a $4,000 hole. The paycheck got bigger over the years. The numbers in the bank account looked more impressive. But the life behind those numbers? The life got smaller. The world got colder. And the margin for error disappeared entirely. As the sun begins to rise over Gresham, Gary closes his calculator. He hasn't found the answer. There is no answer. There is only the endurance of the next 24 hours, and the hope that today isn't the day the one emergency finally arrives. The American retirement was once a finish line. In 2026, it has become a gauntlet. And for millions of seniors, the exit is nowhere in sight. They're trapped in the gap between the life they were promised and the reality they can't afford. The emergency isn't coming. For most of them, the emergency is already here. The paycheck got bigger. The life behind it got smaller. Disclaimer: this is not financial advice. The strategies discussed in this documentary are for educational and entertainment purposes only. Investing involves risk, including the loss of principal. Always consult with a qualified financial advisor or tax professional before making significant investment decisions.